Hello, hello! Welcome, everyone, to another Lo-Fi History this wonderful Tuesday. And we've got Glenn and Marie here, as usual, and I'm Libba. And if you are just joining us for the first time today, then this is your opportunity to ask our historians, Glenn and Marie, any history question that you like. So we always like to start out with what y'all are wearing, of course. And seems like there's at least a few decades between you guys today. maybe even centuries.
Do y'all smell that?
What?
I think it's a stinking hippie.
Oh, rude. It smells like freedom. So yes, do tell. What are y'all representing today?
All right, so I am 1970s, late 1960s. I need to stand up because I need you all to see my glorious ring.
Yes, I love it. That's so much fun.
It's very fun.
Yeah.
So,
Incense, peppermint. That probably doesn't match the music that's playing.
Yeah, right.
yeah, so I got my blue jeans,
Yeah.
my white tunic top, which honestly it feels kind of 1700s.
Yeah, well, there's some there's more continuity than you would think sometimes.
So white tunic like top, and then I got the leather fringe vest going on. The sunglasses actually work with this outfit.
Yes, right.
And then I got, of course, my little beaded headband going on.
Okay, so now I'm going to have to burst the bubble that we've developed over the last several months. Did you make that vest or just pick it up at a thrift store?
This was thrifted.
Ooh, nice find. That's a pretty great find.
Might actually be from the 60s. I don't know. I haven't researched
Yeah.
it. Maybe I can find a list. But Naga has like a whole nice lining and everything.
Yeah, like many baby Nagas were sacrificed to make that vest.
Oh.
Get it?
No.
It's Naga hide.
Naga hide.
It's an old person
Listen,
joke.
Okay.
I gotta be honest, Glenn. That was a pity laugh. I didn't know.
I know.
I didn't know what you were talking about, but I wanted to support you. Wanted to be there.
Thanks,
for you.
I appreciate that.
Hello, Johan is joining us. Hey, Johan. Johan on YouTube. If you have a question for Glenn and Marie, feel free to chat it. But so we've got 70s, but looks like we might have 1770s.
Yeah, maybe a touch. I would be a little old-fashioned.
Oh, would you? Okay.
For the 1770s, and more of a 1750s or 60s
okay.
thing going on right now with the coat, and it is like subtle stuff, by which I mean it's a different. Like the sleeves are a little shorter, which was the style you were supposed to show your cuffs for that earlier period, just as opposed to them having actually come down. This has a little bit of a turn back here.
And is this? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay. It's made differently too, isn't it?
Yeah,
because it's flat-lined.
Yes.
With the raw edges out.
Yes. Yeah, and you know, this is a military coat too, so it's going to have a little less finish on it anyway than what you're talking about, like a civilian coat. It's going to be nice and neat. But this one's just a touch earlier, but it would only maybe get a slight askance look in the 1770s. It's like, oh, that dude's old-fashioned. He hasn't got new clothes or anything. Oh, well.
And so we've been talking a lot about pirates lately. And Marie, why is that?
Because this Sunday, we are having our March Family Day, which is themed pirates. Is the pirate life for you? Come to our virtual Family Day this Sunday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. and find out.
Yes, so we have been preparing for that. Today, Glenn and I filmed our weapons and tactics segment today, so we actually got to see the blunderbuss and the pistols as well, and everything, so that was fun.
And the S words.
Swords!
Swords!
That's right! So we've also been filming some character monologues. So you get to meet various pirates from certain decades of the sort of golden era of pirating. So come.
4 of them.
Four pirates.
Meet 4 pirates.
2 of which are women, which is pretty fun. So that's going to be this Sunday from 1 to 5. We'll have programs every hour. If you want more information on that for the full schedule, just go to our Facebook page or our website. So,
because it is, and you know, the 2 women pirates, and it's Women's History Month, and I think it's important to show that women are just as capable of being cutthroat, murderous thieves bent on the destruction of people's property and livelihood as a man can be. If that's not equality, I don't know what is, ladies and gentlemen.
You know? So we have our first question for today comes from Kathleen. And Kathleen wants to know, do you know anything about Quakers in Georgia before 1870?
Before
1870.
And maybe for those of us who aren't as familiar with Quakers, you can describe what exactly is a Quaker, and maybe if they did have Quaker societies in Georgia before 1870, dive right in.
Yeah.
You've probably eaten their oats.
Yes. So Quakers are they're of course from the old country. Their belief system was not quite puritanical. It was Christian, but it was very much based around the love and community part of Christianity. They were vehemently against slavery. Mm-hmm. They were, as things go with gender and race and everything, pretty egalitarian.
Very.
They believed, as a matter of fact, their churches weren't called churches. What were they? The meeting house.
Yeah.
Yes, they were meeting houses, and they would come together, and they didn't have a particularly universal doctrine.
And it's interesting because they have their meeting house. They're still around to this day. Mm-hmm. And I'm friends with two of them. Two Quakers that I made friends with while
Oh, fun.
Very cool.
in my life.
Yes.
And to this day, they still do their meetings in a very interesting way where a lot of times people have the idea of church, you go and you hear a preacher talk where you have your one leader. They don't really have a leader, like a specified leader necessarily. It's you sit around in a quiet circle, and when someone feels the Spirit move them and they feel like they need to speak or they have something to say, some insight to share, they stand up and they say it.
Oh, it's very, very democratic.
It's very democratic, and they are they are violently peaceful, I guess is the only way to put it. They totally reject any attachment to violence. As a matter of fact, so most of your Quakers from the earlier periods are going to be around Pennsylvania, mm-hmm. And in those areas. And
middle colonies.
Yeah, middle colonies. And there was a huge Quaker population in Pennsylvania, right? It's William Penn's colony, his grant, which was to be administered by the family in a matter of, not in a manner of speaking, actually exactly. There was no royal governor, right? There was a state house, but it was sort of subservient to the Penn family itself. Penn himself was a Quaker he wanted to establish, and the Quakers that were in Pennsylvania, as it continued to expand, the Quakers hated paying taxes. Not so much because they're against taxes, they were afraid their taxes would go for things like buying/stealing land from Native Americans, for paying for the militia, to drill and to buy military equipment. And if, like during the 7 Years' War or any of those wars, they were very much against paying taxes because they didn't want their tax money to go to fund the conflict. They refused to serve in the militia. So very, very many of them practiced what they preached. Literally, right?
Yeah.
They were very strong. Now, that being said, Quakers in Georgia, I am trying to think. I could be very wrong. Do you know?
I can't
of
think
of any bodies?
Quaker society that is in Georgia, especially pre-1780. I know.
Yeah.
After there's, here, but not a specific Quaker settlement in the 1700s in Georgia.
And the later you get in the 1700s and the early 1800s, I think are going to be less prone, because Georgia colony and the state of Georgia as part of the United States, of course, was an area where slavery was legal and was perhaps the main economic means of wealth creation, and the Quakers didn't really want to be associated with that. Mm-hmm. So they would basically, again, remove themselves from the things of the world that they considered evil. So you may be able to deep search.
I did a little bit of searching. Now, a really great resource is the New Georgia Encyclopedia, yes. And I'll put a link to this particular article, but I did find that in 1768, Joseph Maddock, an English Quaker from North Carolina, founded in Georgia the Quaker community of Wrightsboro, named for James Wright, the royal governor of Georgia. And so I'll link this so you can learn a little bit more about that, but apparently there was a Quaker community called Wrightsboro in Georgia. That's pretty cool. So let me go ahead and throw that in the chat. Let's see. That was Kathleen. All right, Kathleen. So here you go.
So there you go.
And
Boom.
one of my favorite movies of all time is called Friendly Persuasion. And it is based around Quakers.
Cary Grant?
Yep.
Yes.
He's
Oh,
in
cool. I've never heard of
during
that
the
one.
Civil War.
Yes.
Interesting.
I love it. I'm not necessarily sure why, but it's just great.
It's a cool movie.
It's a great movie. It has Quakers. It has
Cary Grant.
It's funny. It's heartwarming. It's makes you think.
Yeah.
It's all the good things.
That sounds pretty
That's
good.
from what? That's from the late 60s?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very cool. And Olivia is here.
Olivia.
Yeah.
Olivia says, "Hi guys, was working on my global history essay, so I had to tune in a little late. How dare you?" That's cool. Global history essay. Oh, it's going to be tough to write the entire history of the world in
just
one
one
essay.
Pretty soon, you'll be able to tune in, and it will be us asking Olivia questions.
Yes, exactly right. And Olivia also says, and I say that Glenn wins for clothing points. I mean, I love Marie's outfit, but Glenn, I mean,
I'll put
pretty,
it to the hat. It's
But did
a
she see the
gigantic
fringe?
hat.
Yeah. And Kendra says, "I love the sunglasses with your outfits, always cool." And our next question today is going to come from Carol. Hey, Carol.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Hello.
When did military men begin receiving medals and uniform insignia? Ooh, that's interesting, because I could imagine that just some kind of medal or insignia has gone back quite a while, I would imagine.
Yeah, so the ancient Romans, I know, had some of this going on, right? So this is, if you've seen the pictures, either the stelae, the stone carvings of centurions, or even the recreations of centurions, one of the things that sets them apart is the plume on their helmet runs this way and not this way, right? It's not this way, it's this way. And they have these filare, these bronze discs sort of on their armor, and those were awarded for bravery in battle or for things like that. And that's how you got to be a centurion, right? Was to be a good soldier, to be brave in battle, to have shown yourself to be a fantastic soldier. So that was something that happened in ancient Rome. These filare would be given, or a torque, sort of a neck or a wrist piece of gold, twisted gold, that could be used for decoration. That's the earliest form of metal that I can think of. Coming up into more recent times, that sort of went away, and it really, medals for military meritorious service have to be there for a standing professional army, right? So during most of the medieval period and on up into the Renaissance, these armies were not necessarily standing state armies the way ancient Roman legions were, or until you get into the 16 and especially the 1700s. You start getting into the late 1700s, that's when people start issuing medals. And it was very often for an individual. So Parliament would issue a medal, I'm just pulling this, would issue a medal to Lord Wellington for his brave victory at the Battle of such and such. And so they would order this to be cast, and they would hand it to him, and he would say, "Oh, thank you very much." And it would just sort of go on the bureau. It wouldn't necessarily be worn. During the Napoleonic Wars, that's really when the British Army especially began to give medals, mostly for campaigns. For example, Admiral Nelson at the Battle of the Nile had medals made up for everyone who participated out of his own pocket.
So they were participation medals?
Sort of. But, participation in wars, in a battle where most people were wounded or killed.
Did you have to survive to get them?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They were not, yes, that's another thing. They were not given posthumously.
Oh.
And so, the standard sailors got a lead or just a brass medal. Lieutenants would get a silver medal, and captains and admirals got a gold medal. Same basic view on the medal. And Napoleon gave out tons of medals. The French gave tons of awards. And by this point, by the Napoleonic Wars, all the major nations are beginning to give awards for bravery in battle, for accomplishments, and things like this, which is why you see in the military portraits of the time, especially the officers and the leaders, they're just bedazzled, right? With all these things that are on their coats. And so from that point up to the present day, you do get those medals. Now insignia, that's a different critter altogether. Again, in ancient Rome, that transverse plume is going to be the insignia to indicate who the leaders are. And when you get into the medieval period, they had different shapes of banner that a knight of a certain social and economic standing would carry. So the long flowing banner, actually, believe it or not, was of the lower class knights, and the shorter one was of the upper class knights.
That doesn't make sense.
Well,
Does it?
Well, it depends on what you're looking for. As a matter of fact, there are a couple of instances on the battlefield where a duke or a king decides to take a lower class knight and promote him and show how you were so brave, and here's how I'm going to show it. He would take a knife and he would cut the tails off of his pennon, and then the shorter pennon was like, wow, look at me, I'm kind of cool.
That's
Okay.
fascinating.
Right?
I was just thinking fabric expensive.
Well,
Right.
yeah, but I think it was now the shorter pennants, remember, were highly decorated and embroidered with cloth of gold and jewels and things like that. So it's all in the presentation.
Yeah.
It's
It's
in
all
the
in the
details.
present. Yes, it's in the details. And then, of course, by the time you get, again, to the 16, 17, 1800s, certain cockades in the hat might indicate it. Different epaulets on the shoulders, a sash, things like that are going to be the insignia to sort of set an officer or a sergeant apart. And, of course, you get up to the present day where really about the only indicators are the different ranks that are on the collar, right? Again, to sort of reflect the more democratic view of most modern armies, especially in the West.
Very
So.
cool.
Yeah.
That was good, Blaine. Thank you, Carol. That was an excellent question.
I bet Carol wasn't expecting all that.
Yes.
She was probably expecting me to say 1702.
Yes. Moving on. And going back to Quakers, Kendra Coker, who's a teacher, says that my students were so amazed to learn about Quakers. Loved learning about them last year and fun facts like Quaker oats. And we also have Josh here from our
Hey,
Homeschool
Josh.
Connection.
Hi,
Hey, Josh. Another student who could just lead their own live stream.
Yeah.
For sure. And,
Benjamin Franklin did not identify himself as a full-blown Quaker, but when it came to interacting with any particular denomination, he tended to lean more Quaker than anything else. He did attend to the meeting house and things like that. So.
Oh, very cool. And let's see. Oh, Kendra was also wondering, what was the name that Cary Grant movie?
Friendly Persuasion.
Friendly Persuasion. All right, so check that out. We also have a question from Josh. So here's a question for y'all. In your personal opinion, could Japan have won World War II? Ooh, we love these what if questions.
No.
No? Why?
Well, you'll have. No, okay, I'll tell you. What do you think? Do you think? Would you say
what would it have
otherwise?
taken for them to have won?
An atomic bomb?
But see that, okay, so you're right, but that's just it. When you start looking at the ability, the industrial ability of each respective nation to produce material and to have a population base to people the armies and the navies and the air forces, Japan simply didn't have the depth to do that. And when you begin looking at just the raw, forget the, Japanese soldiers, incredibly brave, very much motivated. When the war starts, Japanese pilots, which Pearl Harbor shows, were the best pilots in the world, best combat pilots in the world. They had the most training, they had the most experience. But when you look at the raw data and the ability of each country to ramp up production, when the war starts, Japan is almost at peak production anyway. And the United States hasn't even started, right? It is practically a foregone conclusion that the United States is going to outproduce Japan. Just done, right? And so that's why I answer no so strongly. Now, I think the converse of that shows that Japan was a pretty good military that they were able to hold out so long against us, right? they did have almost every major nation state had an atomic bomb program, but Japan's was like this big.
Done.
Yeah, Japan's was like had gone this far. Germany's had gone this far. We were here, right?
Because finished one.
Yeah, we got it. We had a couple.
Yeah.
Had a couple. So yeah, but it's
they would have had to complete one.
And and I think there's the classic faux pas of cultural misunderstanding between different cultures, right? Japanese culture and a sense of honor and the way they handle politics is very different from the United States. They thought, as so many people have, that if we hit America hard and hit them hard for the first couple of months, they're going to become so dispirited that they will just give up. That had worked for them in Korea, that had worked for them in China. But, there were people who said, I've spent 3 or 4 years in the United States. The sneak attack on Pearl Harbor, there is nothing you could have planned that would enrage the Americans more and make them decide to go through this to the bitter end and destroy us. Well done, Tojo, and Hirohito. You have screwed us.
Yeah.
So, but they're still fascinating. The strategies and their abilities are just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, so excellent question, Josh, and good to have you here.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from Alma from California. My daughter's 4th grade class is learning about the Dust Bowl this week and how it caused people to move to California. What do you guys think she should know about the Dust Bowl? Do you have an age-appropriate book about the Dust Bowl? Ooh.
Out of the Dust. It's an interesting book because it is a form. So it's a children's book about a young girl living in the Dust Bowl. I read it a long time ago, so I don't remember all that much about it. But it's interesting because it's written in free form poetry.
Oh.
The entire novel.
Wow.
But it's for children. Children can read it and understand it. And it also, I think it won the Newbery Award winner.
That's right. Yeah, I just looked it up.
Mm-hmm. But it's called Out of the Dust. That's like the most famous children's book for the Dust Bowl. Of course, if you're looking for an adult book, Grapes of Wrath, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a work of fiction, but it does a pretty good job of sort of getting to the root of the awful grinding experience of those who were living through it and trying to get out of it.
And I recall us talking about this on a previous LoFi stream, and you were talking about how the actual dust storms came largely from the agricultural practices. So could you, for those of us who weren't there last time, what caused the dust part, all the dust and the great winds and everything? The devastation.
You want me
part.
to?
I think you did it last
Okay,
time.
I'll
add in.
Okay, you jump in any time.
Okay.
Let me dust off my old hat of knowledge here.
Oh my goodness.
The Prairie, right? Where the Dust Bowl it's flat. It's generally flat, and the rises and falls are not pronounced. It is a generally water-starved area. When you look at the East Coast, the West Coast, the mountains, water is at a premium in this area. And the topsoil is very, very rich, but in some places it's not very thick because there hasn't been tens and hundreds of thousands of years of tree material. It's mostly just grass material, right? So the prairie's rich, but the topsoil is not as thick as it is in other places. In certain areas of the Midwest and the prairie. So when you begin to go in there and you have to grow crops, you're going to till it, you're going to take plows through it. Later on, you're going to have mechanical combines and gas-powered tractors and things that are really going to churn up the soil. And what happens is the topsoil and the way the soil has been held together for thousands of years is being destroyed. And so when water and rain does come, it tends to wash the topsoil away. The wind comes howling through the plain, right? The wind is actually a huge factor, and it blows all this stuff up, and it just, because there's not much left, it's the water has gone away after it's drained into certain areas, and the wind comes up, it whips everything. The dust storms are crazy, so it's a agricultural disaster, which means economic disaster. It is an environmental disaster, and people who live there and have lived there for generations, ever since the days of the Homestead Act in the 1860s, they can't make a living anymore. They have literally lost everything. They've lost the farm, they've lost their equipment, they've lost their money, and so they are looking to find some place where they can go and make another living. And California, and again, grapes of wrath, right? California seems to be the place where you can still get agricultural work, but it's a long way away for a family that has a car that's not running too good and 25 cents to their name. Storm. Yeah, right. Going through a dust storm.
And also at the dust storm, you also have just kind of the ultimate, people have been plowing this topsoil that hasn't been taken care of, but I also have the unfortunate event of it hasn't rained in a really long time. Mm-hmm. So everything's really dry and dusty, and you're just waiting for rain to come to settle the dust, and it doesn't. You also, and I don't think I'm making this up, I'm pretty sure this happened, you have a swarm of locusts.
Oh,
it sounds very biblical, but I'm not
sure.
Well,
I mean,
was it locust or was it another type of bug? Boll weevil?
No, boll weevil's down here in
That's
the south.
That's what I thought. We had a boll weevil infestation at some point.
Yes.
But that's happening at the same time, which also eats away the crops, which eats away
Right, it makes the soil issue worse, the erosion issue worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you have the bugs.
Right, but it's
I think are locusts, but that sounds so biblical that I think it's a different.
But it's interesting because it really is the United States' first large-scale environmental disaster, right?
Yeah.
And there have been environmental disasters due to over-farming or over-mining before, but nothing that covers that much territory and affects that many people.
Now, did farming practices change due to this?
I honestly don't know the answer to that.
I'm just wondering.
Basically, I think they just waited for the rain to come.
Yeah, I mean,
and then settle everything back down, and they kind of went back to doing what they did. They did eventually find out and figure out, you do have to rotate your crops to make sure you have enough soil nutrients, but that doesn't exactly have to do with this. It does help a little bit.
Yeah.
But not.
Now, I wonder if part of that was because I know that crop rotation that was in the general knowledge base, but if you're a poorer farmer, then you're probably just gonna go for what's gonna get me the money quickest.
You have to feed your family and stay above water.
Yeah.
They knew what the best agricultural practices were, but there's best practice and there's feed your family practice.
Yeah.
So
it's a fascinating topic, and Alma, I hope that you have a chance to read that book of, I guess, a narrative poem, almost like an epic poem in a way.
It is, because it's all one poem, I think, from what I remember of the novel.
Yeah.
And it's not that thick. It's a pretty good size.
Yeah. So thank you for your question, Alma. And we have another question from Josh. And Josh asks, after the Islamic invasions during the 600s of northern Africa and the Middle East, why did the ancient cultures in modern day Iran and Iraq suddenly disappear? Can we take on that one? Do you know?
Well, I don't know that you can say that they disappeared. What you have, this is one of those great debates that go back and forth in the study of history, is extreme and quick change versus a sense of continuity, right? There are some things that change overnight. When Islam, again, starts in the Arabian Peninsula and moves very, very quickly by the sword as well as by the faith, a lot of people begin to convert. A lot of them are forced conversions and things like that. So there's some major changes, government structures, right, religion, and the way men and women are married, family structures and things like that. But there can be a lot of continuity. You're talking, crops, seasonal lifestyles, things like that. And so some things are continuous, or I should say at least slowly evolving, right? Some changes happen very, very quickly. And that's always the way it is when something comes around where rapid change occurs, especially in a in a higher up political strata. Norman Conquest is another great example, right? You know, and to bring one to a little bit more recent, bringing it back to Japan, right? Japan in 1945 had been severely defeated in a war. The surrender meant that the emperor was not the god of the world and was not infallible and could be surrendered. The god emperor could surrender to men now. So that starts to change a lot of Japanese culture. It starts to change the Japanese view of themselves and change the Japanese view of the world. And yet there is still obviously a great amount of continuity between old Japan and even, Japan in 1945, 1950, and even today. There is still a lot of traditional dress, Shintoism, language. They love samurai movies even more than we do, believe it or not. So you see a lot of change, but you also see a lot of things that remain the same. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm saying, that it didn't necessarily obliterate those cultures. It obliterated the official governmental and religious systems that had existed. But the actual, day-to-day life, the actual community culture and society may not have changed quite as drastically as the bigger picture would make you think.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that very specific.
But a good question.
Fascinating question. Yes, Josh. So, David has a question, and it might be a difficult one. Was the U.S. film industry always in Hollywood? And any idea of the first major film studio in the U.S.? This is actually not a difficult one for us because we actually had a whole virtual family day about old Hollywood, which I will put a link to that playlist in case you want to check that out. But so Marie, take it away. Was the U.S. film industry always in Hollywood? And what was the first major film studio?
So we start out motion pictures are actually what is still a popular kids TV station, Nickelodeons. We start out with Nickelodeons. You pay a nickel and you watch like a 5-second, almost like a meme.
That's fun, yeah.
They're starting in the early 1900s. That's when we have moving pictures, because it's a picture, but it moves a little bit. Ooh. This actually starts out, the filming of this, it starts out in New York. New York City is really kind of the first movie hub. And if you are interested, of course, we have that, the whole family day that we did. We also have an American Girl doll who is very much a part of that time period, and that is Rebecca. And Rebecca is from 1914 New York, and she wants to be a movie actress. Her uncle, or older brother, I think it's uncle, is a movie star, and he is in New York, and they're doing this movie. She gets to come on set. It's very exciting. But at that time, you also have, he says, by the end of the book, I'm moving to California, because that's where all the people are going, to Hollywood. So you really, it starts out silent films, no talking. It's just pantomime, some text thrown in there while it's going on, with a soundtrack that's not part of the movie, but actually played live at the movie theater.
Which is so cool.
It's so
I would
cool.
love to see that.
And hear it, right?
Well,
yes. Well, and see, those guys had to basically look at their sheet music, look at, be able to play, and then watch the movie to get all the timing right. Because they couldn't just play, they had to
make
sure that,
correspond with the action.
Yeah.
That's such a neat job.
The Fox Theater, the Fabulous Fox in downtown Atlanta, which is our closest, oldest theater that I can think of. Sometimes it does a fantastic, they did not do it last year, of course, and I'm not sure what this year's plan is. I have not seen, but they do a Coca-Cola Summer Film Festival where you can actually go. It's reasonably priced, like $5 to get into the Fox, which is usually
not a nickel.
Yeah.
You can't get in there, but it's far more reasonable than normal. And you can go watch a movie. Different movies, usually some classics thrown in there, like Breakfast at Tiffany's. That's the last one I think I went to go see. It's fantastic. They have, at the beginning, shorts. It's like going to an old-timey theater, and the Mighty Mo comes up, and I actually got to watch like a whole historic short film
Yeah.
that goes before the movie with the Mighty Mo playing along.
Mighty Mo, is that?
Yes, that's the name of the organ.
That's what I thought.
And the
Okay.
original
Yeah.
organ.
It's
Wow.
Yeah.
amazing.
That's so cool.
Yes. Now to get back to New York.
Yes.
So from New York, it then moves out to Hollywood. Hollywood's basically this desert
It's
area.
cheaper. I mean,
It's cheaper. There's land everywhere. You can go build movie sets. Unlike New York City, that is expensive. Already been a very established city for several hundred years. There's not really a whole lot of land to just go build your movie set. So they move out to California. They start opening film studios. And when you really have the big five and the little three, which is MGM, is definitely one. And the others,
MGM, Warner,
brother.
I'm gonna look it up.
Paramount? Is
Yes.
Paramount?
I think so. We're going to look that up.
Yeah.
We don't have
yeah.
that exactly memorized.
Yeah. So let's see. We have, because I remember. Well, we'll have to look at our own family day
Yes.
to
Universal.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
that it?
definitely Paramount, Universal,
MGM, Warner.
MGM, mm-hmm.
Maybe those were the five. Or maybe Paramount was one of the smaller ones at that point.
It could have been.
Yeah. I'm thinking like
I think
old
Paramount was the smaller
Hollywood.
But you
Let's
basically
see.
have those, the big five and the little three. And it's very different from film today. And you would have, because each studio had their own actors. Basically what they refer to as their stable of actors that they would just pull from that. It's, okay, well, you want to sign a contract with us, you can't go play with anyone else. You can only play with us now. You can only act for us. And that goes on for a while, up into TV starts happening in the 50s, and then you have television and movies, and you have to share actors, and the whole thing kind of flips and becomes something new and different, which is an interesting shift in the way that movies are made. And you no longer have the quickness
You're right.
of the movies, and because some movies, like there's the A-list movies and the B-list movies,
Mm-hmm.
you would have they would just crank out movies like you would
could,
not believe.
from the point you started writing the script until it was showing up in the local movie houses, sometimes could be 3 or 4 weeks.
Think like
weeks.
a Hallmark movie.
Yeah, they just, I mean, because it's a machine. It is literally a machine.
So you go
Right.
from the machine, because now you're competing with television. People can just turn it on at their home and see a show. So then you go from just turning them out to really huge blockbusters where a lot of time and a lot of thought and a lot of money goes into one big movie.
Cleopatra, for example.
Ah,
And
yes.
the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
A cast of thousands, which those are still pretty cool movies.
It
Yes.
is.
And I think RKO was the one we
RKO,
may have not
yes.
mentioned. Yeah, that was one of the earlier big five.
And that's
studios.
one of the ones that did not survive.
Yeah. Excellent question, David. And I hope y'all get a chance to check out that virtual family day program.
Yeah.
And watch some old movies.
Yes,
Right.
yeah. Let's see, Susan, going back to Dust Bowl and such, Susan mentioned that I think Laura Ingalls Wilder's family was affected by grasshopper attack on their crops, which may have been something similar to what
Yes,
those
yes, that
experienced.
was before, but I remember that chapter very well.
Yes. And Olivia says, I think she wants to know about the Mongols and the Barbarians. Her question is just the Mongols? Barbarians?
The Barbarians. Well, what is a barbarian?
Yes, let's define barbarian.
That goes back to the ancient Greek, actually. Of course, the ancient Greeks, the classical Greeks, always thought very highly of themselves in relation to everyone around them, right? And so that's the root of the word barbarian, is basically it means not a Greek person, because they spoke eloquent classical Greek, and everyone not Greek would speak ba, 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 which is where barbarian comes from.
Wow.
The root of the word, that's how we get it. So, one man's barbarian is another man's, hey, we're just a horse culture trying to move into some place.
Yeah.
So, barbarian is definitely a word that means the other, the unfamiliar, the threat. Now, the barbarian, so it depends, going through history, who the barbarian is can vary greatly. to the Greeks, when the Romans first show up, the Romans are the barbarians. When we think of the Romans, it's usually the Gauls or the Visigoths or someone like that from the Germanic lands or from what's now France and things like that, because they're outside Rome. Now the Mongols are a whole different critter. The Mongols are steppe warriors from what is now northern China, and they started out, just horse nomads, right? They're just nomads, and they end up under Genghis Khan becoming the largest land empire that we know. We're pretty sure that was the largest one the world has ever seen. Didn't last a long time, but the Mongols made it to Eastern Europe and were about to attack and invade what's now Germany. That's how far they got.
Wow.
And then the Great Khan died, and then they all had to go back and fight over who was going to be in charge after that. So that was 13 something. It was 13 something. I can't remember the exact year.
Well, there you have it.
I'm within a century though. But yeah, so barbarians and Mongols. The Mongols were definitely barbarians to the traditional Chinese emperors. They were barbarians to the Eastern Europeans, the Bohemians, the Germanic peoples. But they themselves can, you don't think you're a barbarian unless you're role-playing in a D&D game, which is fun. But, you're erudite and perhaps not as advanced and perhaps more clever than those silly, fancy people.
Well, excellent topic, Olivia. I wonder if that helps you with your global history essay.
That's right.
Susan's question is, could you give in a nutshell answer about the Bosnian-Serbian conflict? I don't know anything about that.
I don't think you can.
Impossible.
As to quote the people at the Versailles Conference in 1919, the Balkans again. Right?
I'm sure that's very funny, but I don't.
That's it. The area, Bosnia, Serbia, what became Yugoslavia, Albania, all those countries, to the east of Hungary, southeast of Hungary, around the Adriatic, those countries, the Bulgaria. It is such. They have a long history, right? And Romania, there's another one. There's so many small nationalities, and the trouble becomes when they begin to try to coalesce into nation states. What happens at first is these smaller tribes take over other tribes and they start to develop smaller kingdoms. And then these smaller kingdoms in the Balkans sort of have their own status quo until the big dogs start marrying in to try to absorb them, which is exactly what happened with the Austro-Hungarian Empire, right? The Habsburgs decide to start marrying sisters and brothers and cousins off to these royalty of these smaller countries in the Balkans, and then they get absorbed into the larger, greater Austro-Hungarian Empire, which by the time of World War I is pretty close to collapse because it has under two, it's a dual monarchy, head of state, so many different nationalities and cultures that don't mix and have been at each other's throats for so long that the empire's collapsing within before the World War I even starts. And then when World War I starts, they're on the wrong side, right, with the Germans and the Ottoman Turks and things like that. So when the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Habsburg family as a royal family ceases to exist in 1918. So then you get all these different countries jockeying not just for their independence, but for territory, right? And they go to Versailles, they fight amongst themselves, and the things that were set down in the Treaty of Versailles in 1919 were somewhat haphazard and politically expedient then, to say nothing what it's taken us a century since then and another world war and the collapse of the Soviet Union and to sort of change. And that's, in a nutshell, that's why you have Bosnia and Serbia fighting over particular territories, because what was set up at the Treaty of Versailles, based on one of Wilson's 14 points, is that these countries should, that going forward, there should be self-determination in these countries, right? Well, The trick is, what is the unit of self-determination? Is it historical land borders? Is it religion? Is it genetic race? Not that race is genetic, but genetics. Is it language? Is it Greek Orthodox versus Roman Catholic? Is it which side of the river do you live on? What is the unit of self-determination? It is impossible to define that, but that's what the treaty people in Paris had said they were going to try to determine it. Well, I've just listed just a few of the possible hang-ups of what self-determination could mean. And so it comes to relatively arbitrary border drawings, again, going through another world war where Germany and then the Soviet Union start to mess with that area. They're looking for territory. They're looking for sovereignty over particular areas based on language, based on historic borders that can go all the way back to the 12 and 1300s. Wow. Right? So it's just a general mess.
Was there
it's fascinating history. The people there are so interesting, but it is such an amalgamated situation that it is hard to start pulling all that apart.
Was there like an exodus of people due to this? Like, I'm trying to think of just the normal person.
So some solutions at Versailles were that rather than we could leave the border where they're at, but rather than trying to divide it up to let this country have this one and this one have that one based on the populations, I'm just going to pull two countries out of the air, Serbia and Romania, right? So if this area has a lot of Romanians and this area has a lot of Serbians, but they're on the respective wrong sides of the border, rather than move the border, why don't we just encourage immigration of those two people? Let the Romanians go into Romania and take the houses of the Serbians, so that the Serbians can then go back.
That's complicated.
There are entire graduate level courses on just the ramifications of the Treaty of Versailles.
Yeah.
Not what comes after, just them trying to make it in Paris in 3 or 4 months.
Wow. Perhaps that's a good live stream topic eventually.
I don't think we have enough interweb to discuss it.
Yeah, right. All right, let's see. Oh, thank you, Farmer Funk. Farmer Funk says that we have the best jobs in the world. And
thanks.
I agree.
Dress for the job you want, they said. Here we are.
Yes, exactly. And David mentions that, you collect old movies. Thousands of the best U.S. films ever. That's amazing. Casablanca, Maltese Falcon. I haven't seen Maltese Falcon, but I definitely love Casablanca. That is definitely a classic. Oh, and speaking of Serbia, are you familiar with, David also mentioned Ratko Mladic tried to create a new separate Serbian state, Republika, and I can't pronounce this, Srpska?
When did that happen?
I don't know. Let me look up this name.
It's a little known fact also that the closer we get to the modern day, the less my understanding of history is impressive.
This was a convicted war criminal and a Bosnian Serb colonel general who led the Army of Republika during the Yugoslav wars.
Okay.
So yeah,
and see that's the thing. The history of that area, in my mind, gets very, very fuzzy after about 1945.
I think this is a little bit later. Yeah. So, all right. Well, it looks like we do have a few more minutes left. So if you want to chat any more questions for us, do go right ahead. Also wanted to remind everyone that we do have our March donation goal. We're trying to get to $250, and we've already got 35, which is awesome.
Yay.
So thanks to everyone who's already donated. And with this round of donations, if every $5 that you donate, you get a ticket, a raffle ticket, and we are raffling off a $15 gift certificate for our online gift shop. So we've got lots of really great items, books, gifts, of course, lots of history-related fun stuff. So every $5 that you donate, you get a ticket into our raffle. So you can go to bit.ly/marchgoal. Just type that in your browser. It'll take you to the donation link, and we'll go from there. But of course, we just appreciate you being here today.
Absolutely.
And let's see. We'll take a few more questions if we've got them. Josh says, my third and last question.
Today, you mean,
Today,
Josh.
yeah. Josh asks, if Huey Long survived his assassination attempt and he ran in the next election against FDR, could he have won? Now, I'm not super familiar with this situation. Could you give us a little context?
Yes, the
Glenn.
Kingfish, Huey Long, governor of Louisiana.
Governor of Louisiana.
Governor of
I see.
Louisiana. He was, in the 1930s during the Depression, pretty much anyone who was looking for high public office in the United States was trying to find a way out of the Depression by guaranteeing people basic needs, right? But it's sort of similar to what we are seeing today. In the 30s, people thought that the rich people were just too rich. They weren't paying their fair share of taxes. And what you see is that different candidates for office are suggesting different links that we go to. FDR, even though today we consider him almost an authoritarian socialist, he was one of the least radical folks who were in the running for president in this time. Huey Long basically had different programs where his idea was to basically take the wealth from all the rich people. And he, one of his big speeches was, take them out there, let them keep one mansion, let them keep their yacht, let them take the wife to Europe once a year or so. But after they've gotten that, it's time for them to give other people the food off their table when the other people are starving. There's no reason for them to do scraps. I think one of his speeches is actually on YouTube. It's very interesting. Very humorous man. Unfortunately, a very corrupt man. That's how, in Louisiana in the 30s, you got to be where you were at. And the other problem is his economic program to share the wealth. That was the name of his plan, share the wealth. It's very Bernie-esque when you start to look at it. It didn't add up. He could never explain it in such a way that everyone was going to be able to get what he said they were going to get based on what he was going to confiscate from wealthier individuals and larger companies. It never added up. So, to your question, would he have... I think he would have been a front runner, but I think given, even though FDR had some failures at that point, I personally think FDR probably would have pulled out that election, certainly the primary, and therefore, the election proper. We won't know, of course, but I think Huey Long was part of the general movement to make a more economically fair and egalitarian society, who, like I said, went pretty far even for his time, probably too far to get the lead ticket. That's my take on it. But he's a fascinating individual.
Yeah.
I've actually thought that we should make him one of our characters, but again, he's Louisianan, not Georgian.
Well, we could at least.
I'd have to work on my accent.
Yeah, right. We could at least do that for a general live stream.
Oh, sure,
sometime.
yeah.
That'd be really cool. Find the right. Yeah.
Do the speech. I don't have enough hair either, by the way.
Yeah, right. Oh, we got wigs.
We got wigs.
And thank you so much, David, for your $15
Yay,
donation. It says, love it, always interesting. And now a huge sign comes up when you donate. That's right.
That's right.
Yes.
Want to make it clear who's donating.
That's right.
So thank you so much. Now sweet. We're to $50. That was fantastic. Woo! All right, everybody. Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions for today, so we'll end it there. We do hope that you'll join us tomorrow. We have a very fun live stream. We are going to meet Juliette Gordon-Lowe, who will look a lot like me. So I will be portraying Juliette Gordon-Lowe, the founder of Girl Scouts, tomorrow. You'll be able to ask Daisy, as she was known, any question that you like and get to know her fascinating story. It really is a fascinating path that took her to Girl Scouts. So do join us for that. That's going to be tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. And we also have Friday. Of course, we have our members only live streams, and I honestly need to remind myself what this Friday
What that one is.
That's me.
Oh, what are you gonna be?
I'm getting dressed.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's gonna be an awesome
but
one.
in the style of the 1880s. So bustle dresses. How do you make the what makes the dress so poofy in the back?
Yes.
remember-
Yeah.
Why is it
Find-
poofy in the back?
Why is
Yeah.
it poofy in the back? You'll find out on Friday if you
Yes.
are a member. And I will be going through and showing. It is actually just my most recent make that I have
Oh,
just
so this is gonna be a
finished.
new one.
Yes,
Very
one
cool.
that no one
I'd
has
say.
seen before.
Oh, awesome! So
Yes.
if you are not a member already, I will put our link to become a member in the chat. It's only $3 a month or $35 a year, so quite a bargain,
Yes.
if I do say so myself.
You know, and I have a challenge for all of our viewers today.
Yes.
I think you should find a couple of your friends that you would like to annoy and tell them to tune in next Tuesday for Lo-Fi.
Yes, please do. Yes, spread the good word about lo-fi, especially if you have students in
Oh,
your
yeah.
family, or know some students, because that would be really great to help them out with. Just like Olivia and Josh are here, it's awesome to have our young historians
That's
join
right.
us as well. All right, everybody, we will see you in the chat again soon. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you again soon.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.